30%. What are the disadvantages? So that we are able to question the 15% that has been suggested. Be careful. I do not support the 15%, but I would like to be convinced. I would like to understand so that when I defend this 15%, I have some facts. That's the first question. Second question, the advocacy. Why don't we carry out that advocacy at the AU level? Why only at the UN and why not at AU? Because recently the African Union adopted what we call CAPA. That is actually the African position. They adopted that one. Why not take a position at the level of the African Union? But we are supporting the UN position. Why? The 15% is actually dangerous or negative for economies, and yet for other economies it's beyond the 15%. Kindly give me some scientific. Thank you. I'm going to talk in French. Kindly keep your headsets on. I really loved the presentations. I followed very well the presentations. I would like to make a comment on what one of the members panelists said, the one who talked about our leaders being pickpockets. I agree. Of course, another person said that it was not true looking at their country. But as far as I'm concerned, our leaders in general are egocentric. They are selfish. It is for that reason that actually there is corruption. They are the first people. Our leaders, they are the first people who do not actually, they don't want to get involved in this fight against corruption. Consequently, we now seem to dance to the tune of the external forces. Now, this is what I'm saying. Now, taking into account the situation, so it means that the members of the civil society should not drop their hands. They should not relax. They should actually move forward, intensify the fight against actually that corruption. They should insist on the governments, those that are in authority, to respect the social contracts so that we are able to give to the populations what is due to them. Thank you.
2 questions left. So I'm sorry, I had 2 questions that were there from the beginning. So if they can make them in 1 minute or less, please be brief and we'll try to get to you. 3 actually. So 1 there. What was the question? Okay.
All right. Thank you. My question was, why do African nations keep ratifying these frameworks that aren't inclusive and transparent in their creation? Why can't African nations begin to leave these frameworks? And also, how can we use the African Union to begin to promote our own frameworks? And the last question I have is around the UN, the tax convention that we're talking about. What are some of the foreseen challenges that we expect in implementation? Because obviously, when we're calling for a more fair framework, the global North might not be really interested in that. So what are some of the challenges that we sort of envision in implementation? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, please. If you can be brief, then we can have time for that.
Actually, mine is not a question, but it is just something which I need to reflect on, maybe given a clarification. I think sometimes we are addressing we are following people who are not supposed to be followed at the time we are following them. Our challenge was not about how to tax corporate income tax. Because like in Uganda, we have a 30%, but operating on open account, whereby after paying all your taxes, you are able to take the money you have collected in Uganda, which has facilitated capital flights and least financial flows. The challenge we had is how to tax the companies that are not operating on brick and mortar. And that's why you see some countries have moved ahead to have a digital service tax, like Kenya taking the 1.5, France taking the 3%. To me, I think we need to understand what do we want? Are we supposed just to follow, or we need to find our own solutions to our own problems? The other issue is on the global tax body. I think, and my issue is how can we learn and relearn from the WTO, because when you look at the WTO issue currently, you see bilateral arrangement, you see coming of unilateral arrangement, and then the mega trading blocks. We saw what happened in the WTO MC12 when they say that we are not going to go ahead to allow the WTO ministerial moratorium on the electronic transfers, electronic transactions. And you find that as a result of the failure for the WTO to come up with a solution on the taxation of the electronic transaction, members have diverted to unilateral arrangement. So to me, I think we need to learn and relearn from the mistakes of the WTO or the challenges, so that we can propose for the global tax body. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, if you can, please, as we out of time. Let me just go there and then I'll come back.
All right, thank you very much. I think for me, it's to state a bit of some numbers. If you look at Africa's GDP, I think it would help us to just have a basic analysis of what we're to earn from this particular issue. So in total, from Pillar 1 and 2, we are envisaging about 275 billion United States dollars. Looking at the size of the global economy, it actually means that we can only get 0.3% from that deal. So I think it would be good to start looking at it that way. If you look at climate change and our needs for Africa, we need about $2.8 billion, $1 trillion, and that would mean that we need that contribution from the OECD deal would only give us 0.3%. Looking at the contribution in terms of debt recovery, Africa owes over 700 billion United States dollars. And if you look at it in relative value, the contribution will only be 1.3%. So we can go on and on. So I think using such relative value and analysis actually will validate our desire and demand that we should not fall for this trap and trick that we are experiencing. I thought I could also comment on that. And lastly, on illicit financial flows, over $80 billion annually. If you look at the contribution, it's only about 10.5%. It's the only thing that shows a little bit higher, but truth be told, we want 100% recovery in terms of illicit financial flows. There should be no illicit financial flows, and such a deal should provide that leverage. But so far from the OECD framework, we don't see that to happen. So it's at that point we need to think of unilateral measures to go around this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My sister, please, also very quickly.
Okay, for me, what I wanted to talk about is the OECD tax deal. Even when you're talking of rejecting it, we also need to think of the reasons as to why we're also giving the rejection. And I can give an example of Kenya. So for Kenya at the moment, when they pick the OECD tax deal, it means that they'll have to do away with the digital service tax, which at the moment, we only have 11 companies that actually fit in this OECD tax deal. But at the moment, we have 89 companies that are already paying the digital service tax. So for Kenya, what they did is they rejected this OECD tax deal in conjunction with Nigeria and SAT. But you also need to think of reasons. We need to give reasons why we justify going for rejection of this tax deal. If it's something that is beneficial to the country, then you go for it. If it's not something that is beneficial, then we also give our justifications on the reasons to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally here.
Okay, thank you very much. in terms of rejection, we will need regional mobilization. And my question is that looking at the political landscape that we have, the socialists and the capitalists, what kind of challenges do we envisage in terms of these pushbacks?
Thank you. Thank you. Are you done? No, okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll start with you, Stefano, and then finalize with Dereje. Over to you.
So I think this is a very good example of what I was saying yesterday in the tension between policy reforms and institutional reforms. When we discuss policy reforms, there's so many issues and so many different angles to it, and we get lost very quickly. But the issue, let's try and keep the eyes on the ball. Do we agree, and I think we do, that we need substantial changes in tax regimes, that the current ones, in their confusion and disarticulation, do not work for the region and do not work for the global south, and they are fundamentally biased towards corporations and the global north? That's a fundamental reality, and I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Now the issue is, where do we want to have this discussion? Do we want to have it in the country club of developed countries, hoping that on the basis of some mysterious mechanism it would work for the global south? Or do we want to have that discussion in at least a multilateral democratic space, which will still be heavily influenced by political economies and all the mess that we know? Let's not believe in fairy tales, but it's a fundamental choice of tariff. And my argument here is that this is a moment in which we need to push pause on policy discussions, in a sense, and really stress the need of a different governance arrangements in order to create the conditions for having a different set of policy discussion. So maybe I'm oversimplifying the issue, but the reality is this: if we keep on discussing policy in the wrong place, in the country club of developed countries, we're not gonna get anything out. We need to change the terms of the discussion, the locus of the discussion. And as much as that will continue to be complicated, at least it provides for an inclusive space in which everyone is at the table and can actually have an equal vote in the discussion. Now, when we do that, don't think that the OECD will simply close its books and walk out and say, oh, thanks, it was nice. Good luck with that. The biggest risk, actually, is that the OECD will look for a UN rubber stamp on what it's doing. And I think probably in the next FFD4 process, this is what they will be seeking. They'll try and pretend that they are doing this for everyone, and they want to put a nice logo on top of that. We need to prevent that, and therefore Gatcha's strategy, on one hand, dual track, work on the UN system, but continue to condemn and undermine and expose the illegitimacy procedurally, as well as the substantive ineffectiveness of what is being proposed, continues to be valid. We need to continue to operate at these two levels. And just to answer Irene's question, there are indeed significant disconnect in when we refer to our governments in these international negotiations, and unfortunately we can't expect that those disconnects will be breached by endogenous forces. We need to be the one forcing the reconnect between different delegates within the same countries, between finance and diplomats, planning ministries, and within the region and what is happening in New York and every other places. We need to be the bridge. And in order to do that, we need to be organized to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stefano. Dereje?
I will start with a polemic against my Nigerian brother. Is pickpocketing a crime or not? Did I exonerate pickpockets? He accused me of doing that. I was trying to put things in dimension. You know, emotionally, I am against an African leader who steals 10 million compared to a multinational company which steals 100 million. it's not about denying that. It is about bringing things into perspective. Because if Africans continue mea culpa, there is no solution to that. And what angers me, for example, I was once invited by the Nigerian High Commission in New York. It was about stolen assets recovery. There were three representatives of, there was a committee who decides on how that money goes back. Nigeria, the World Bank, and Switzerland. I was mad and said, you know, the ones who were facilitating the thief is now the judge. That is how much the corruption narrative is destroying us. That is why it's not exonerating corruption, it is giving it dimension, giving it a perspective. And sometimes what you said also, pickpockets can also take, if you have a lot of money in your pocket, they take more. And revenue-rich or resource-rich countries are more victims of corruption than others. That is also, I was not putting it in number terms actually. It is about structure. Even corruption is possible because of the structures of the North. I remember in Germany, corruption money paid in Africa was deductible from tax. You say this is business expense. It is a crime when it is done in Germany. It is rewarded when you do it in Africa. Abacha's money did not remain in, we know where it is. And these are the ones calling us dirty. Because corruption also needs three. It needs facilitators, it needs givers, and it needs takers. All three should be condemned. It is a triangular crime. They have been pinpointing only on one, on the receivers. That is what makes me angry, and that is why in my polemic I prefer calling them pickpockets. Okay, so I think that means we are one. I'm not underestimating the damage, the facilitation corruption makes. They get 300,000 to forsake, through investment agreement, to forsake millions. They are not even good thieves. So that angers me. That's not about what I was talking, you know. So I was just trying to give it some perspective. The second question from Ibrahima, why are we against this 15% minimal tax? There are two reasons for it. One, it is going to create a race to the bottom, a race to the minimum, instead of ending tax competition between countries. When we demanded 25, so for example, the average corporate income tax rate in Africa is around 25%. And now when this 15% comes in, it forces countries which are maintaining this corporate tax rate under pressure to adjust it to the new global minimum. So this is one risk. The second one is the agreement is under pecking order, which means the undertaxed, Irene was explaining that yesterday also, the undertaxed will first go to the residence country. Second, if it is not taxed, then the second on the list to tax the undertaxed is intermediaries. And the third one is the source countries, developing countries. So it is in the last order. In the first calculation done by the observatory, EU tax observatory based on estimates is the Pillar 2 solution will bring 16% more revenue to rich countries, and at best only 2% to developing countries. So it has no revenue advantage what it brings, and it brings into brings this race to the minimum instead of abolishing race to the bottom. And the third point is, it is actually your second question. Actually, ATAF had a policy conference at the African level recently. They came out with a resolution that this community, the ATAF and the policymakers which met together, they asked that the global minimum tax should be raised to 25%. It is not ATAF. So that means it is part of the demand of Pan-African institutions as well. It's not just a civil society demand. So the reasons, these are the two reasons. The question to Irene, I think Stefano has also replied, but there are really some mechanisms we have set in motion to bring about the solidarity of southern voices and southern groups. The first is at the Civil Society Forum. The Global Alliance itself is the coordination point for southern voices. It's not just a solidarity between us, it is also about working together to force our governments to work together. It is not about civil society collaborating with Latin America, it is also to bring about a bridge. And what also you mentioned yourself, Irene, one of the encouraging things, Ocampo, who the new Colombian finance minister and was ICRIC chair and colleague of yours in the ICRIC commission, said was he will work with his colleagues in Latin America to support the Africa Union finance minister's decision for a call of a UN tax convention. This is how it is starting. The second one is the South Center, which is an intergovernmental structure bringing together revenue authorities and other tax experts to negotiate on common positions around these issues. CSOFFD Forum is another rallying point of civil society. And most importantly, again, the G77 remains the pivotal get-together of South-South collaboration. G77, the name is misleading. It has 134 country members from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. It is the largest group in the UN. It is the scare of OECD. That is why they don't want to take it to the United Nations. So the G77 remains the forum where the developing countries of the global south come together to coordinate their positions and their struggles at that level. I think I might have forgotten, and the time is running late also. Okay, sorry if I have not come. There was one note I took, but I have forgotten now.
I think they're all covered. Thank you both. I'm conscious that we stand in between people and lunch, so I want to thank you all for staying. Yeah, I want to thank you all for staying this long. I think important points that are coming from this panel, beyond everything that has been discussed and the technical arguments, there is a window of opportunity, and there is a principled reason to reject the OECD tax deal. So as civil society, as MPs, as even citizens, we need to start advocating for a change in international tax structure that actually opens up the possibility for the reforms we want to see towards justice, towards equality. And we can't do this with the broken system. We can't do this with the solutions that are being proposed in a forum that systematically excludes the voice of global South countries. So I invite you all to remain engaged. And I think a key point of engagement, if I have Alvin in the room, Alvin, are you here? I don't think Alvin is here.
But he has to be here.
I think Alvin is not here. There is. So a key point of engagement. No. Okay.
It is part of the it's the most important part of the program, and he promised he will be there. But can you? Yes, please. Just. Yes, it's not secret. It's not going to announce a coup d'etat. As you might have been participating in it, based on our rejection of the tax deal of the rich, and in support of the Africa Finance Union finance minister statement calling for the UN tax convention, TGNA initiated, and it was supported by TAFJA, by Global Alliance, TAFJA, Red Justicia Fiscal, the Latin American chapter, and coordinated that at the global level for online signatories. And that has been a major success. And actually, the idea was for Alvin to be now here and give us the number of signatories and officially launch the sentence. I don't know what happened in between, but that was the arrangement. I hope there must have been a serious emergency for him to disappear, because
We can do it then with the closing.
Yeah, we can do the closing session
when
later today.
he's come.
So Alvin is coming, but last count to not keep you waiting too much. As the Regia was saying, this is a statement that TGNA led in elaborating to call for a UN tax convention following the pronunciation of African Ministry of Finance in Senegal in April this year. Last count that I know of, the statement had upwards of 200 signatures. I'm looking at my 300 signatures. And this is an important rallying point to keep the issue on the table. And I like what Stefano was saying about choosing our turf and holding all the other issues to a space where we can discuss more inclusively. Now we have Alvin, so over to you. Apparently you're launching a statement. Yes, you can speak from. I think you can see he's an activist. He's belligerent. So, Alvin, can you tell us more about the TGNA statement around the UN Tax Convention and how people can get involved, and what are the prospects for that?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm trying to split myself between 3 different sessions, but thank you for that question, Oria. So, in terms of background, I don't know if that information was provided already. The UN Finance Minister met in Dakar, I think a few months ago, and in their resolution, they passed a statement demanding that the issue of the global tax body be taken up as a matter of urgency, and initiate a negotiation at the UN level. And we as Tax Justice Network felt that this was a unique advocacy opportunity to be able to push this African agenda, African demand into global spaces. So what we did, we developed a public statement which is available on our website, and I will ask my colleague also to share it out to everyone who participated in this conference. And that statement simply seeks support of African civil society organizations and other partners across the globe from a solidarity perspective, making a demand that the position of the African government be given space within the global discussions. And we are happy to note that as a result of that advocacy, we actually collected, I think, over 300 signatures of support from across the world, civil society organization coming in and supporting that demand. So as a result of that, what we have seen, of course, is positive response. I think there was a statement that came out 2 days ago, or I think 2 days ago, and I hope that you spoke about it, where the UN Secretary General has come in issuing also a statement supporting that. So it's really a clear outcome that this demand, these processes might seem sometimes laborious, they might seem frustrating. Sometimes you feel like you are pouring water into a sieve, but they have their purpose and their validity, and we will continue, of course, supporting this process and ensuring that it goes beyond just a statement, that they actually it kicks off a global conversation that leads then to the establishment of a UN tax convention. That, I think, is the response I wanted to give. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alvin. Thank you to all of you. Please continue following Alvin for more information and all of his TGNA colleagues. And yeah, thank you all. Thank you to my panel and thank you to Ginny.